Today, 250 years ago, American democracy is stronger than ever. And its greatest people have forcefully spoken in November, giving President Donald Trump another resounding mandate for furthering the cause of our most cherished values and ideals. For us, who count ourselves not only as allies, but true friends of the United States, we have always seen this country as the shining city on the hill, as another great American, the unforgettable Ronald Reagan liked it to call it. I understand President Trump's triumphs is a clear mandate for the embodiment of these ideas. And this is why I believe that better days are coming for people who cherish freedom and democracy. The enemies of freedoms are not limited to our hemisphere, but are found everywhere. However, rest assured that you will always find Paraguay on the right side of history. We have been one of Israel's staunchest allies for the past 50 years, but especially after the cowardly terrorist attack of October 7, 2023. We were thus one of the first countries in the world to designate Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist organizations. The other great threat for our Western Hemisphere is, of course, the ever-growing influence of China. I think that people don't realize the magnitude of the threat. Let me close this remark by remembering once more that enduring document of the human spirit. So I will leave you today by praying to God Almighty, so that in His infinite wisdom, He may lead us, all citizens of this great Western Hemisphere, to better and more shining days.
Make America great again.
And now I have the esteemed privilege to present our keynote remarks. Before I present the individual, I'd like to present his country a little bit. Because Paraguay, I think, has an outsized role in Latin America affairs. Many people don't know this. I know many people in the room do, but many people in America don't know this. That Paraguay is today the largest country in the world that continues to resist all the pressure from the Communist Party of China to maintain its diplomatic recognition of Taiwan. It is a country that has taken a very bold move to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It's a country that has been, for decades, building alliances through commerce and trade as it shares borders with pretty much half of South America. And it's a country that really is starting to grow under the leadership of its current president, who's been blessed to join it with us today, and potentially, along with his foreign minister, can have the opportunity to lead the region through the Organization of American States. I want to acknowledge also Foreign Minister Ruben Ramirez Lescano, who is a candidate to become the next Secretary General of the OAS. We sincerely wish you the best in that endeavor. President Peña is no stranger to Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, I met him a few years ago when he came to Washington, D.C., but I see he has a long history at the IMF, teaching at universities. But most importantly, he's a regional leader that's now rising to become one of the most prominent presidents in all of Latin America. We're honored that you're here with us, President Peña, and we definitely are going to be able to support your country under President Trump. I know these last 4 years have not been the friendliest. You don't have to get into the details, but we know that Paraguay has persisted to maintain its alliance with the United States, irregardless of politics, and we appreciate all that you have done over these last years. Please join me in welcoming President Santiago Peña.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is such an honor for me, and I thought it was going to be very hard to talk after Sebastian, and then I heard Mike, and this is a very tough spot for me, so I will try to do my best. I think we're meeting today not only on a great day for the U.S., the America. I think this is a great time for the entire world. Also, democracy is nowadays taken for granted. It is an extraordinary and very hard-fought conquest of the Western civilization. One of the greatest leaders, and I will say it, probably the greatest man of this brave and free nation, has given birth to define democracy as the government of the people, by the people, for the people. It is extremely powerful and beautiful definition, and I can think of no better ideal to fight or to die for. This great country was conceived by its founding fathers, Madison, Jefferson, Adams, and other brilliant statesmen, as the first truly democratic republic in modern time. And it was based on the idea that all men are created equal. as the immoral face of the Declaration of Independence so eloquently put it. Today, 250 years ago, American democracy is stronger than ever. And its greatest people have forcefully spoken in November, giving President Donald Trump another resounding mandate for furthering the cause of our most cherished values and ideals. For us who count ourselves not only as allies, but true friends of the United States, we have always seen this country as the shining city on the hill, as another great American, the unforgettable Ronald Reagan liked it to call it. I'm firmly convinced that many, if not most, of your Latin American neighbors of goodwill have always looked upon to the United States as certainly that shining city on the hill, embodying the values of democracy, equality, freedom, human rights, and a more perfect union. Of course, as you well know, President Trump has always insisted on the importance of these values and the uniqueness of the American experiment, and his electoral Trump heralds better days for these ideals, not only for the United States, but also for the rest of the world. It is my sincere hope that this will be the case. I believe with all my heart that better days are coming for the Western way of life and for its value of democracy and freedom. The great Russian poet Joseph Brodsky, who escaped from the despotic communist regime in the height of the Cold War to settle in this very same country, once remarked that we should be very precise with the use of language. All problems, he thought, arise when people start using words casually, carefully, thoughtlessly. We are meeting here today in the Western Hemisphere Security Forum, so I will try to be very precise with my language and try to use both of these words, Western and security, very carefully. For the past years, we have been told tirelessly that we should be ashamed of using the word Western or West. And we have been led to believe that the Western civilization is the culprit and perpetrator of the worst crimes. This is not only a very harmful idea, but sometimes worse. It is utterly false. As Brodsky himself will tell us if he were here today, Western civilization is the only one that secures freedom, equality before the law, and democracy, and that fights against the oppression of authoritarianism. My friends, we are compelled to speak the truth and loudly. Not only our Western values and ideals, the only ones that have given democracy, freedom, and human rights to millions of people, not only have these Western values given mankind the most unprecedented economic prosperity ever seen, with the lowest level of poverty in history, but, and this is an irony that our ignorant, woke, and extremist critics fail to see, these Western values have given birth to the only society on earth in which you have the right to question or negate its own values. Go and try to do the same somewhere else. Good luck on that. Prison, or sometimes worse, will surely await you. Only here, in the much maligned West, it is possible to question the values that have constructed society itself. Only here can we find the civilization which has not only envisioned the possibility of questioning those values, but even enshrined a right, our sacred right to free speech to do so. So let us honor and proclaim here today those Western ideals of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Queridos amigos, I ask you today, let us cease to be timid, to be shameful, to be bullied into the corner. I say it's enough. Be ashamed of. There is nothing to be ashamed of. But on the contrary, everything to celebrate in defending democracy as a way of life, free markets as the most efficient way to reducing poverty, the rule of law as the means of eliminating arbitrariness, liberty as the founding rock of society. Once we are again fully convinced of this Western civilization, worse is the only one that has constructed democratic institutions. That is the only civilization that has secured human rights for everyone, including minorities. And that is the only civilization that cherishes legal institutions over barbarism, terrorism, and violence. Only then will we again be able to secure a free society at this most noble institution purpose us to do so. Once again, I understand President Trump's triumph is a clear mandate for the embodiment of these ideas. And this is why I believe that better days are coming for people who cherish freedom and democracy. I have said enough, I believe, about the word Western. So let me say something about the other word, including this title, which is security. The great Erasmus once remarked that war is sweet only to those who have never tried. My country, Paraguay, has bitterly learned the great wisdom of this phrase. And moreover, it has learned that promoting the values of democracy, liberty, and rule of law is the only truly effective weapon for furthering the cause of peace and security. We have learned, in other words, that we must defeat our enemies, rogue authoritarian regimes, criminal organizations, and terrorism, with our values, with our ideals, with the better angels of our nature, to once again quote Lincoln. Paraguay knows all of this because of its history, which has been shaped by war, violence, and authoritarianism. We can speak because we know to the alternative. The devastating War of the Triple Alliance in the 19th century, a conflict that confronted Paraguay against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, left an indelible mark on our national consciousness. A magnitude of this historical catastrophe is very difficult to understand. To provide a context, the American Civil War, which ended a year after we began our national ordeal, resulted in the death of 2% of the American population. Meanwhile, Paraguay witnessed the death of 90% of its male population. More than 50% of the entire nation died during that conflict. A demographic catastrophe that echoed through generations. 60 years later, after the end of that war in 1870, we fought another war against Bolivia in the Chaco War. The rest of the century was marked by civil war, political instability, and authoritarian governments. Yet, from this war, Paraguay emerged not defeated, but transformed. My nation rose with unshakable spirit of dignity and purpose, carrying forward a deep understanding of the paramount importance of protecting our sovereignty while fostering regional cooperation. These historical lessons resonate powerfully today as we face modern challenges to our hemispheric security. From this century and a half of strife, Paraguay rose to rebuild on its own its political and economic foundations. Through careful cultivation of democratic institutions during the past 35 years and the commitment to transparency, Paraguay boasts a robust foundation for sustainable development and security. We are now reaping the results of this process of maturity by being one of the most vibrant democracies in the Western Hemisphere, where populism, socialism, and other enemies of liberty have never taken root, and by being the country with the highest economic growth in the past years. Moreover, we recently reached a symbolic and historic milestone where Paraguay achieved the investment grade status last year. This recognition is a testament to my nation's commitment to sound governance, fiscal responsibility, and institutional stability. The same determination that helped us overcome historical adversities has enabled us to build an economic characterized by prudent management, sustainable growth, and resilient institutions. My friends, our commitment to security is founded in our history and our very hard-earned values. In Paraguay, security in the national level is founded upon multiple dimensions. First, economic stability forms the base of national security, enabling us to better address challenges while promoting prosperity for our citizens. Environmental security stands as another pillar in our strategy. Paraguay leadership in renewable energy, with our hydroelectric capabilities through Itaipu and Yacyretá, position us as a key player in the hemisphere's sustainable future. Furthermore, we acknowledge that cybersecurity represents a new frontier in our defensive architecture. In facing contemporary security challenges, my administration has demonstrated unwavering commitment through concrete actions. More than 1,500 counter-narcotic operations have been conducted, including the largest seizure of pure cocaine in Paraguay's history, more than 4 tons of cocaine. Through effective multi-agency international cooperation, including the DEA, transnational criminal organizations have lost almost $500 million in the past year alone. We are expanding Paraguay's role in the global security landscape with robust international cooperation and an effective legal framework in local resources. At the international level, we also hold the values of democracy, liberty, and rule of law over their nemesis, authoritarianism, populism, and terrorism. In our own neighborhood here in the Western Hemisphere, we sadly know that democracy is a hard-won conquest, not a given. We have thus seen in the last year the rise of populist regime, which began by promising a socialist heaven, but have in fact been transformed in authoritarian infernos, making their people go through the hell of economic privation and the negation of their basic rights and liberties. Today, the people of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela are suffering because their leaders have forgotten the values of democracy, equality, and the rule of law, which are the backbone to our societal architecture. Paraguay firmly condemns these regimes, and we are especially calling for the respect of the democratic will of the Venezuelan people, the end of the abuses of its current leadership, and of the humanitarian catastrophe which our Venezuelan brothers and sisters have been suffering over the past years, which has affected all of the countries in our hemisphere given the mass exodus of its people. And just a side note, because our fight on democracy in the entire region is not recent. In 2012, at the height of the Chavez regime in Venezuela, Paraguay tried to implement the socialism of the 21st century. And a former bishop who betrayed the church and ran for president was the puppet of this group. So when the Paraguayan Congress decided to take him away through the constitutional means, then Minister of Foreign Relations, Nicolás Maduro, went to Paraguay, meet with the military, and asked to raise arms against legal institutions in Paraguay. And the militaries defended the Constitution and Paraguay, and that person was out of office. Let us unite together against this regime and bring back democracy to our own backyard. Paraguay will continue to defend the values of democracy, freedom, and rule of law, and it believes in multilateralism as the only way to address these issues and promote the collective well-being of the countries of the hemisphere. That is why I am proud to confirm that my country has decided to launch the candidacy of the Minister of Foreign Relations, Rubén Ramírez Lescano, as the next Secretary of the Organization of the American States. Reflecting with this decision our deep commitment to the principles and values that support this organization. Of course, the enemies of freedoms are not limited to our hemisphere, but are found everywhere. However, rest assured that you will always find Paraguay on the right side of history. We have been one of Israel's staunchest allies for the past 50 years, but especially after the cowardly terrorist attack of October 7, 2023. We were thus one of the first countries in the world to designate Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist organizations, and only recently, this happened in December last month, I was in Jerusalem with the Prime Minister of Israel as we opened the embassy in the eternal capital of Israel, Jerusalem. I state that Paraguay will continue to be against terrorism, extremism, and for the just cause of the Jewish people. The other great threat for our Western Hemisphere is, of course, the ever-growing influence of China. And thank you very much, General, for what you have done in explaining this, because I think that people don't realize the magnitude of the threat. Some of you may know Paraguay stands as Taiwan's best friend in South America, the largest country in the world that supports Taiwan and its longest-standing ally, as we recognize this country and have full diplomatic relations. This friendship is not based on economic interest or utility, but on a shared value of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Indeed, Paraguay maintained this principle stance because we recognize that the defense of democratic value cannot be measured in mere commercial terms. The immense pressure to change course is perhaps the best indicator that we are making the right decision. Paraguay may be comparatively small in terms of geography, but we are an immensely proud nation, a giant at heart. We will not allow ourselves to be pushed or to be bullied by foreign threat, even from powerful nations. But we continue to be a bulwark in the fight for security in our hemisphere against undue influence of authoritarian regimes. My dear friends, looking forward to the future, I can see unprecedented opportunity for hemispheric cooperation. As we witness this historic transition here in Washington, I reaffirm here today my country's commitment to working closely with the United States and all of our hemispheric partners. The values we share, which are derived from our rich Western heritage, democracy, freedom, the rule of law, and protection of human rights, must guide our collective response to security challenges. Let us move forward together, conscious of our shared destiny, guided by the wisdom of our past and the promise of our future. A future which I'm convinced shines brighter than ever. Let me close this remark by remembering once more that enduring document of the human spirit, the Gettysburg Address, in which Lincoln wisely recalled that everything we do is under God. So I will leave you today by praying to God Almighty, so that in His infinite wisdom, He may lead us, all citizens of this great Western Hemisphere, to better and more shining days. Thank you very much. Thank you.